Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to our event, the Road Beyond Reclosure. Too many R's, but it's all about Omicron and the events in the experiential industry. We're in the midst of a third wave in India with respect to the Omicron variant. And yet again, we're asking ourselves this question of where does the event industry and the festivals industry go from here? What are the concerns that we are dealing with a third time around? And we're here to talk about everything in this space with you today. My name is Rashmi Dhanwani. I am the founder and CEO of the Artex company. We're a strategic consultancy that services the culture sector in India in areas of audience development and sector research. Today's session is a part of Festival Connections, which is an annual program of events and a wide-ranging network of festival stakeholders that aims to provide access to skill development and opportunities for exchanges relevant to the festivals and the cultural sector in India and South Asia. The program is initiated and supported by the British Council in India and has been for the last 3 years in partnership with Arts and Culture Resources India. We'll hear more about on the learnings for this multi-year project and the Council's work in the field shortly when I introduce Jonathan, who is the director of British Council in a short while. But let me first give you a sense of what is it that we'll be discussing today before we move on to talk about our work in this space. The festival and events and the experiential industry has been obviously one of the worst affected since the outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020. As some of you know, we've had the sector recover, do a few events, and then be dealt with a blow of another wave, which happened in the UK in the last quarter and right now in India in this present quarter. Just as we're coming back into a positive rebound, businesses are again facing the impact of another wave of disruptions, postponements, and cancellations, mainly because of the contagious Omicron variant. Even though it appears to be less severe in terms of the impact and the contagiousness of this particular variant, it does impact health and safety standards and how we are allowed to operate. How does this specifically affect the festival sector and the culture sector across both countries? Let's talk about how big the sector is first and how many people are involved in this space. In India, we're talking about the live events and entertainment sector, of which festivals is a part. It's close to 5 lakh crores in terms of the size. And it includes both the organized and unorganized sector, and it employs about 10 million people across all verticals. In the UK, this is a £70 billion industry, employing around 700,000 people. When the first wave hit us in 2020, in early 2020, almost 100% of the events across the world were cancelled or postponed, some of whom were able to move to digital formats, some of whom said we'll wait and watch. So it's taken time for the sector to come back into action. Events and festivals, because it's typically seen as leisure, is normally the last sector to be given permission to open up. And this is the third time in 2 years that the sector across India and UK has faced a complete shutdown. And again, sorry, just normally we don't start off our events at such a gloomy note, but it's the third time that this is happening. So by this time, we feel that there should be some guidelines, some support, at the very least, some sort of a pathway for us to allow us to plan amidst these repeated waves. So what does that sustainability plan look like is something we are hoping to sort of, at least at the very least, discuss in the session. I think the first week of Jan, at least in India, when slowly every day we heard about 3-4 festivals being cancelled, we quickly reached out to industry leaders, all of whom are on the panel. And literally within seconds, all of them graciously agreed to come here and talk to us about what is now, we think, is of course a very timely session that will identify practical action and immediate support available to festival and events organizations. And what are the possibilities that we can think about when it comes to public experiences around these various variants, or the future of public experiences, community celebrations, and cultural life. Before we move on to talk about this particular session and introduce our panelists, I'd love to invite Jonathan Kennedy, who's the Director of Arts at British Council India. And just to give you a sense of the wonderful work that the British Council has been doing, of course, over decades, but particularly in the last 2 years since we've been hit by the pandemic, and the kind of reorientation of some of the work into thinking about what the future of cultural work looks like. With that, Jonathan, inviting you to share a little bit about the council's work with us.
Thanks so much, Rashmi. And so our program in festivals, we broadly called Festivals for the Future. And it's really been around strengthening the creative economy of India's arts and culture festivals. We'll go to the next screen. And the reason why we landed on festivals as one of our multi-year programs between the UK and India, in part because India has such an enormous number of established and emerging arts festivals across the country and across art forms, and that part of our work is to sustain that, or was to sustain that, because of its scalability. And because we also know that from the UK perspective, there's enormous amount of expertise that sits within higher education in arts management and culture policy and festivals, and also from the international festival sector in particular, including Manchester, Edinburgh, London, and Belfast. So that our programme is looking to work across India and across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Our research with the Artex company and FICCI on the impact of COVID-19 in the past couple of years has also confirmed that the bulk of the arts and culture sector, including festivals, are MSMEs, micro, small and mid-sized enterprises. That's effectively workforces of less than 50 at mid-scale, fewer than 20 at small scale, and fewer than 10 at micro scale. And they form the majority of the sector in India, which also means in terms of small and micro, there's a huge amount of risk. The small companies who've been established for less than 5 years don't build up big cash reserves. They're still getting established. And when the growth of the festival sector, which had been about 17% in advance of the pandemic, hit, we also knew this meant risk to the arts festival sector in India because of the pandemic, and the festivals just having to stop or close down or postpone or go online. We'll move to the next screen. Our program, therefore, is kind of holistic. It has many aspects to it. Festivals, connections, of which this is one, which is a kind of networking, experience sharing platform that we've been running with Artex for the past couple of years now. South Asia Festivals Academy, of which I'll talk shortly. Festival Partnership, which is bringing festivals between countries together to collaborate. Research into festivals and their value to the creative economy in certain states and parts of India, and a Festivals from India portal that we'll be launching in March of this year, which will be unique in terms of profiling festivals from India to India and to the UK. And all of our work in the skills programs with Festival Connections and the Academy and networks we've established will all be on the platform, as well as attracting new relationships with the UK and India as part of what the platform will enable by way of profiling and showcasing. I think we'll move on to the next screen, except to say that, of course, this year is India's 75th anniversary of independence. And we are working with the Foreign Office and the Government of India on a big bilateral arts and culture season, India-UK together. And a key part of that programme will be our work with festivals. And Festivals Connections with Rashmi and the Artex team have had several thematics. And when COVID first hit in March 2020, we moved from what had previously been across India in rooms, all online, and we ensured that each session was absolutely relevant to the need of the hour. So in March, when everything went into lockdown, we did sessions on how to manage your cash flow when suddenly you have either no income or your festival is cancelled. So what do you do to manage your organization's sustainability in the sharp end of a crisis? And since then, we've adapted and listened on each occasion to each of the sessions to find out what's going to be useful for the next session, to make sure we're responsive and relevant to the moment. So as you can see, we've done lots of sessions: fundraising, digital festivals, international collaboration, inclusion and equalities, youth art festivals, environmental festivals, and so forth, to ensure we are sharing expertise from festivals in India and festivals in the UK. And I'm delighted that we have Tom Sweet, our British Council colleague from the music team, who will be sharing experience of the music sector and the festival sector as part of this session today. And we'll move on to the next screen. And then this is a new innovation, and maybe this is best if I hand just for this moment back to Rashmi. If not, I'll keep going, no problem. I'll keep going, because this launching over these next few months will enable internships between festivals in India and the UK, so that we can broaden out the relationships, deepen them, and build those structural relationships that will then sustain the programme beyond our work at British Council. We'll move on to the next slide. And our South Asia Festivals Academy started in Goa, face-to-face, before the pandemic, then had a version in Guwahati, and then we had the pandemic and we had to move the whole programme online. And to some extent, it's liberated us, because we're now able to expand the programme from festivals in India, but actually now across South Asia. And we start next week with our intermediate course for festivals across India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And the course is now run with tutors from India and the UK, and is formally managed by Edinburgh University, who also now accredit the course as a postgrad or undergrad credits towards another qualification. So it's also got lots of rigor around it. And the value of, say, the intermediate course is that you leave after the 10-week online distance learning sessions with a business plan that you can then take away and use to drive your festival forward and to sustain it through all of the challenges of COVID, let alone climate change. So that's the Festivals Academy that we've been running for the past couple of years now. Our research, as I've intimated around taking the temperature, is looking at the wider gamut of the creative economy in India. And specifically around festivals, we've worked with the Ministry of Tourism in West Bengal on mapping the creative economy of the Durga Puja festival. And that report was released last year. And in terms of the key pieces of data, the festival, which runs from 5 to 10 days within the state, as colleagues will know on our call now, and across Kolkata in particular, generates 3.3 crore rupees a year of income generated as part of the festival, which is about 2.59% of GDP in West Bengal. So it's a major driver of artistic exchange, international relations, cultural tourism, and artists and livelihoods benefit enormously from the festival. And we'll be launching our third round of the Taking the Temperature research later next month, I think actually in March. We'll move on to the next slide, thank you very much, which is a quick headlines, which will bring all of this work together on one platform. Festivals from India, we're launching in March, and is both centered at the business-to-business level with workshops, the academy, connections, blogs, all kinds of materials that festivals can turn to use and build and learn from each other and with the UK. And then the B2C, the audience-facing aspect, will profile festivals from all over India to the UK, so you can come and visit, book your flights, come to India and attend the festival, including seeing some festivals streamed on the platform as well. I think that's it. On to the final slide. This is just some of the festivals that we've worked with and had artists performing at over the past couple of years, in some cases face-to-face, and in the main in the past couple of years online. And on to the next slide, which is our work that we've done with Wales and Northern Ireland and festivals in India in particular. And that's a quick summary of that. I'll not get into too much detail there because I'm just conscious of time. And move on to the next slide, which is a kind of call to action. If you're watching online now and you're a festival or a festival goer, you can go onto the Festivals from India platform and either register your festival on there or register as an audience member to go to a festival. And all of our work that we've been doing in festivals is on the British Council page, which is also linked from this screen now. And with that, I'll hand back to Rashmi.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I hope everybody can hear me. Thanks for that introduction to what British Council has been up to and a call to everyone to sign up for festivals from India. Moving on, I'd love to now invite the panel. I'll introduce everybody one by one and we can get into the discussion, starting with Mr. Deepak Choudhary, who's the founder and director of EVENTFAQS. If anybody here is associated with the events industry, you know about EVENTFAQS in India. And he's also been the founder director of various organizations such as Laqshya Event Capital and a new organization called XPRNC, reading as Experience Dubai. He's the co-founder of the Whistling Woods International School of Event Management and has recently launched India's first sports and esports school with Whistling Woods. And with Roshan Abbas, who's also on the panel today, he's now in the process of launching the first IP and festival company in Dubai called, as I mentioned, XPRNC, Experience, as well as an event and creative school in Dubai. We also have Ms. Malavika Banerjee, who is the director of the Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet, as well as the literary meets in Bhubaneswar and Ranchi. Her company, Gameplan, is one of India's foremost sports marketing companies, working in this field for more than 2 decades. She's also a partner at Bailoon, the iconic handloom store in Kolkata. We have, of course, Roshan Abbas. He wears many hats, but the one that we're referring to today to begin with is the president of EEMA, Event and Entertainment Management Association, which is an autonomous body of registered companies, institutions, and professionals that operate within India's event and experiential industry. Particularly over the last 2 years, they've been doing some wonderful work throwing light on the perils that the events industry has to face and making a case for the industry in front of various policymakers and governments. Roshan will tell us more about that shortly. But aside from being the president of EEMA, Roshan has been, as you know, a media personality and has co-founded and led several ventures across the spectrum of events, festivals. He runs also a festival called Kommune and has helped conceptualize, the company called Kommune, and has helped conceptualize the festival Spoken, bringing together performers from across the world for storytelling, poetry, spoken word, and song. And finally, we have Tom Sweet, who is the music program manager at British Council, and with whom we have, British Council has developed music programs which will be delivered across various countries and have included focus on film, music, creative producers, and the music sector development. Tom has been working in the music industry since several years, starting with a program, with the role of a programmer at the Big Chill Festival in UK and India, and has also established a dynamic year-round music program for the Big Chill's London ventures. This was followed by contemporary music programming positions at the Barbican and the Warwick Arts Centre in Midlands. And with that, I'd like to open up the session to all of you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My first theme that we'd love to explore with you is what is the immediate practical action for events and festivals given the Omicron variant? We know that several festivals, at least in India, have postponed their dates to another 2 months. We also know that there have been cancellations that have been announced. But maybe the first person that we could call upon here, Roshan, given your position as the president of EEMA, what kind of conversations have you been having with the sector and what kind of action, practical action, has EEMA been taken in order to respond to the variant and the resulting lockdown?
So thank you, Rashmi, and wonderful to be with everyone on the panel. I just want to just a quick clarification that the 500,000 crores number that we've given, in that the wedding sector is perhaps the single largest. So people are looking at it from a festival perspective. If you look at what we call religious and cultural festivals, then that amount would be a much smaller amount. Again, I mean, we've got some guesstimates on that, which I could share with you all later. But in terms of what you said, this being the third wave, mostly all festivals in India end up happening between November and February, because that's the best time in most parts of India. And everybody plans festivals at that given point in time. We had our own festival. Deepak, I know, had multiple festivals which were going to happen. And in fact, one festival managed to escape Omicron, which was the India Bike Week. So it happened at Ambi Valley with about 3,000 people, I think, coming in. And one of the rare things that managed to happen. But everyone has since then been having these kind of cancellations. The problem essentially is that there's a lot that goes into putting together a festival in terms of marketing, and that's an expense you've already made. You can obviously push certain elements, but this becomes the key thing. So at EEMA, I think our biggest point was to somehow get the government to open, because for the last 2 years, we've constantly been saying that this is, everyone's conscious is involved, and there is this whole thing about lives and livelihood. And you can't swing either way 100%. There has to be some midway. I just shared with you some news where, I just got a message from people saying the UK is saying that from tomorrow they might, Scotland is clearly saying that they will stop a lot of the restrictions. Face masks are, restrictions are coming down. Now, it's only happening because at some point in time, there are two participants in this. There is the public, who, even when the lockdown was announced in Bombay, I remember on Christmas, I was going and it seemed like it was a regular day on Juhu Beach. Nobody cared. So there's a certain amount of immunity that is built within the people. As people who are part of the industry, we have sent out petitions to possibly every state. We now have state chapter presidents. And these chapter presidents have in some cases been able to meet up with chief ministers. Therefore, in Madhya Pradesh, Himachal, West Bengal, and Uttarakhand, there has been some movement. I know very, very clearly that in Himachal and Madhya Pradesh, they have now come up with a 50% capacity rule, which is what they have done. Now, this is something which we do believe is going to provide some amount of impetus, but the festivals largely take place in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. So these are states in which we are still having conversations. On unofficial levels, we have been told that mid-February things should start opening, because this variant has been a little milder in that sense. But we always get caught in this position. And as EEMA, we've reached out to the finance ministry, to INB, and to tourism, because even today, our industry doesn't have a single, department that plays the stakeholder for us, right? I mean, who do we report to? Do we report to, commerce or finance or INB or tourism? So I think the jury's still out on that, but we've actually been using that to our advantage by approaching all of them and saying, you have to give us some answers. We are getting, honestly, I'll tell you, there are some good things afoot. They may not be able to do something in the short, run, but in the longer run, they will definitely have a lot of impact. So do you want me to talk about that just now, or I can speak about that later as well if you...
No, let's come back to that. I mean, I like what you said about this balance of lives and livelihoods. So on the one hand, there is a moral responsibility to keep the audiences safe, to keep your artists, your team safe. And on the other hand, it's also about surviving. And I just want to bring in Malavika at this point. I mean, you have been in this position where you have to take a call about pushing your festival or holding it, keeping all of these guidelines in mind. Roshan also spoke about certain expenses that are made and that cannot be recouped, like marketing expenses. How did you take the decision of postponing the festival that you are running and not postponing? I understand that you're doing some of those events digitally, but a majority is going to be in March. So if you could just walk us through the reasons for you, or actually at least walk us through how you arrive at the decision that you did to postpone. And from your perspective, how did you have to prioritize one over the other, and what took a call? So the other festivals might also be able to relate to that kind of decision making.
Thanks for having me on this. And, in our pre-event meeting, what I said was, it was very hard for us because we actually anticipated the strictures that would later come into place. So on the 30th itself, we had a festival that was starting on January 8th in Bhubaneswar. So as you would imagine, hoardings were out, we had sent out invitations, the works, and we had to pull the plug on that. So, the tough part for a literature festival, especially, I have another life in sports marketing, which has its own dynamics, but a literature festival could technically take place even with 50% attendance, distance. You go through those temperature checks, you can do your RT-PCRs on speakers. It's very hard to explain that even without government really telling us that we can't have it, the situation becomes so hemmed in with 50%. You're scared, you're hearing rising numbers. Most authors are on the wrong side of 60. It's not like you're running a jazz fest or a rock fest where everyone's of a certain age. Here we're dealing with people of a certain vintage. So there are so many other issues that one has to balance. Then you hear that some of the delegates have in fact, tested positive. So then it just kind of heaps onto your back and you are really pushed to a corner. And that's when you just have to take the call. Have corporate sponsorships and partnerships in place. They too don't want the optics. Tata Steel, for instance, has huge interests in Odisha. So they wouldn't want to be seen as that company which is backing an event when the rest of India is, in such a bad way. And Bhubaneswar didn't have those numbers, but at least 75% of our speakers were coming from Delhi, Maharashtra, and Kolkata, which were having numbers that were galloping in the first week of January. So it's very hard to do this. To answer the part about how does one cope with it, I think going forward in the immediate future, one has to, come up with this odd verb, unplan. You have to put aside some money to that part of the contract we just sign blindly, force majeure. We actually have to seriously think about speaking to our sponsors, speaking to those who are invested in our events and saying, look, this is a situation where we need some flexibility from you. I really, our festival was going into its 10th year in Calcutta and 6th year in Bhubaneswar. So we've been there for a long time. But I really wonder about those festivals which are starting out, which are having their first or second edition, for them to, go to a sponsor and say, look, you have to, underwrite these costs which happened, but, nothing came of it. But that rapport comes with time. So that's one. And secondly, we were thinking of other events that we were planning. And this is, I'm sure, true of other people on this panel. Now, I don't feel like doing those events. We were thinking of something in music. We were thinking of something in the Northeast. We just don't have the courage or the heart to go ahead and start something new till we know where this world of ours is headed. So, and finally, one quick point, we have to manage our own optics. We look like beach bathers when a tsunami is coming, events. We are the first thing that's cleaned out, As soon as you hear, oh, this wave is coming, we are the first things to be thrown out of the system. So we need to show authorities, audiences, that we can manage a situation where things are not ideal and we can still ensure safety and protection and a festival that is not a super spreader.
Malavika, thank you so much for that. And I completely empathize with what you're feeling. I mean, I think my biggest worry is exactly that people like you who are creating festivals, and if they are feeling the lack of energy around this in order to, that the creative drive that you need to do it and the worries that are accompanied by this variant, I do hope we're able to, at least through this session, talk through what that means for us and give you more ammo to be able to come back stronger. But I'd like to bring in Tom here briefly. Tom, the UK, of course, the last 2-3 months, we've been hearing about what's been happening in the UK, the rising number of cases. Of course, because we work very closely with British Council, we've been in touch with our colleagues in the UK, and we sort of saw what was going on. But at the same time, you really don't know how the industry is dealing with it or operating. And you know, in a pre-talk, you did mention that there were some measures that were put in place to deal with some of these unplanned shocks. So could you just give us a sense of how the UK's festival scene has adapted or struggled, and what kind of measures have been in place that may have supported the sector through this third wave?
Thanks, Rashmi, and thanks for having me on the call. It's great to be with everybody on the panel. So yes, in the UK, obviously back in 2020, when the pandemic first broke out, everything was hit very quickly and very hard. It was interesting watching the rate at which festivals did cancel, and there were some which you just thought, you know, they're leaving it really late, and the inevitable came to pass. So I think from memory, 2020 was pretty much a write-off. And as you mentioned earlier, the live event sector in its biggest sense in the UK it's worth 70 billion a year. It employs 700,000 people. So it's a significant sector and contributes to the economy. There were lots of cries out for support. The Department of Culture, Media and Sport initiated the Cultural Recovery Fund, which is a £2 billion fund to help organisations adapt and reshape through the pandemic. That launched in 2020 and has had several rounds. I think there are still some ongoing. And there was still pressure on to support the festival sector. And last summer 21, the government announced a scheme, a festivals insurance scheme, which would protect people who signed up, events that signed up from September 21 through to September 22, against full cancellation because of government regulations built in. Government regulations being brought in. So that sounds like a dream, but you know, it wouldn't have protected you against things, for instance, say your headliner had to cancel because someone came down with COVID. It would just be full cancellation of the event. Now, what that's done is given people confidence to go ahead and plan. So I think in 2021, we got the second half of the festival season. I mean, in the UK, it's quite long. It starts sort of late May and runs all the way through to mid-ish, late September. I think festival number 6 might be one of the last outdoor ones, along with End of the Road. So I think the second half of festivals took place. They look very different, very much UK-based talent, because travel was still nigh on impossible, as I'm sure you experienced in India. But I think it did help, give local artists a bit of a platform, which they may not have otherwise experienced. And I think looking into this year, it is giving people hope. A number of festivals came on sale, in their traditional time, sort of October, November last year. It did sell out very, very quickly. I think the appetite is there and audiences are really hungry. But what is still going on at the minute, it feels, as you mentioned, yesterday the government announced that pretty much all COVID regulations have been abandoned. You don't have to wear masks in shops and in public transport anymore. But what's still going on is artists are still having to cancel entire tours, because they might book a tour with 5 dates in the UK, but they might have 5 dates in Germany, 5 dates in France. Germany still have far stricter regulations than we do. The German leg of the tour falls apart, the economics of the tour fall apart completely, and the whole thing's off. So it's still proving very disruptive, even though it does feel, touch wood, that we're going beyond one wave. So I think, for the sort of May, for the summer period, things hopefully at the minute look a bit more stable. In the immediate term, it's still a bit rocky.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's great, because aside from the fund that you're talking about in the insurance scheme, I think one of the important points you raised was how these measures give the sector the confidence to replan and move forward. And here I'd like to bring in Deepak for a second here. Deepak, with your work, particularly in the media, asking the questions that you should as the event industry with EVENTFAQS and the work that you're doing currently, what do you think is happening in India when it comes to creating these kind of safety nets? What kind of questions should we be asking our authorities, the government, what kind of questions are being raised? How can we get this confidence to plan? The curators don't feel disheartened to organize and run a festival. What will give them the ammo to get back? Sorry, several big questions, but it seemed like since you've been talking to so many organizations, you may have some strong insights here.
So let actually government bit let in detail. Roshan will have a better hold because he and EEMA are interacting with a lot of people on a regular basis. What I feel strongly is not too much will, other than the regulations of opening and closing, not too much support is what I see. Government is not aligned to a support. Okay, so where the tax is one, we are a small industry for them. Okay, so it's going to be a challenging piece where they will really make difference to our lives. Okay, they've not done for these years. But I strongly feel I'm saying take opportunities within the business. Okay, so one part for sure, this pandemic has taught us where event managers were not seeing hygiene as the biggest thing. I think it's taught us, and we're moving towards that direction. Content has become a hero. Event content, which was not there, and to a festival, if we talk about festivals, for sure, 30 to 40% revenue business can come from content, which was not there. And third, and the biggest thing, I strongly feel in person will have more value going forward. Okay, so for example, a sponsor will value more in person because they have not seen for long. A ticket buyer will buy a ticket. Okay, so this will change. I think what I feel to this industry and these changes will be for good. Yeah, so that's what my perspective to keep COVID on one side. Adding to industry's perspective overall, what I feel, industry's seen a toughest time. I think I was chatting with Vicky the other day, and we were chatting on the numbers of this year. And the numbers of this year, I said, just copy the number of last year. So it's that sad in the real sense, and we'll see we're seeing the same cycle. But we'll have to find opportunities. I think there is no, at the same time, there is no going back on it. We'll have to keep thinking further how to live with this and keep moving.
Thank you, Deepak. One of the things that you brought up in your response was just how small we are as a sector. And hence, we don't have the kind of voice that we are hoping and needing from, in order to represent ourselves in front of the government. So Roshan, would love to hear from you again. You briefly mentioned about the kind of impact that EEMA's work has made so far, especially when it comes to representations to the government. So if you could just give us a sense of what all EEMA has done at the moment, and also throw some light on a couple of these initiatives that Tom, not to draw a comparison, but to talk about those safety nets, right? How is the government listening? Have they come up with anything in response? Anything on that perspective, on that view would be great.
So see, we looked at Rashmi at this from three different lenses. One, of course, was that from the last 2 years, we've been reaching out to the finance ministry before every budget with our set of demands. I know, and initially everybody said nobody will listen, and I'm a big believer in saying that if you use social media correctly, everybody will listen. And so when you have 500 members who've got teams which are large, who are in touch with, don't forget that a lot of celebrities and well-known people work with the industry, and therefore we sort of use them as well to try and amplify our voice and put these messages out. When these messages went out, we actually were, we also worked with FICCI, because FICCI as a body is very, very, close and with the government, knows what's happening. And those conversations actually led to a lot of great work, which is that firstly, the INB ministry held a meeting, which was towards the latter half of last year, where they started having conversations from various stakeholders of what we expect in the next budget. We made, I think we told them that, we are attending the meeting because we're so confused, we don't even know who we report to. And I think the secretary found that quite amusing. And then he set up a separate meeting where he said, I'm very embarrassed to realize that, you all are here and I didn't even know that, am I meant to represent you? And this actually led to 2 very good meetings. One that happened with the finance secretary, And the finance secretary took some of our demands. We spoke about incentivizing people doing events within India. We spoke about giving maybe some subsidies to people who were doing them at cultural monuments, etc. And so we put out a whole list of things. They're currently under review. I do believe, I strongly believe that this year, the finance ministry, either in the finance minister or if all goes well, maybe even to the prime minister's level, there will be some mention of our industry. So this first part of making the invisible visible was key. The second thing is that there is a National Film Development Corporation, as you know, and under that, they have formed a single window clearance for all films that are coming to India. And we use that opportunity to say, why can we not have a single window event policy across India? Because a large part of our time goes in the facilitation of the 17 to 20 draconian, laws that command, when you've got to get all kinds of permission, local police station, fire, you name it. So we fought that to a certain degree. And when we raised this thing of saying, can we get a single window clearance? Unfortunately, it is a state subject. But we have pushed to say that some elements of it can definitely be at the national level. It is being looked at, a committee has been formed, and this is going to go forward. And again, we hope that we'll be able to at least get some policy level decision on this. The third is that the tourism ministry, again, our past president Sanjoy is an absolute champion of our industry, and he sits on a couple of these committees, and he reached out and said, listen, the tourism secretary has turned and spoken about bringing events to India. We immediately, took that opportunity, had a meeting with the tourism secretary where we spoke about the wedding sector at large. We knew that their interest was in that as a sector. And with that, they were extremely impressed with the numbers that we were able to share with them. We also feel that if the wedding sector is allowed to come into the ambit of the Ministry of Tourism, A, there's incentives, B, there is a lot of, you can get subsidies, incentives. We can actually have somebody at an international level in every embassy sitting and talking about India as a destination. And if we're able to achieve that, I think we will at least be able to do something that will push the industry forward. So these are some of the initiatives that we've done.
Congratulations, Roshan. That seems like a Herculean task to be able to talk to various departments within the government and then figure out where you fit in and figure out a future for this sector. Malavika, just want to bring you in here. We've heard from Roshan. It's not really a top-down approach because Roshan himself is from the sector. He's been talking to people on the ground. EEMA has been. But from your side, what is it that you need? What are the priority interventions and support that you need from the authorities, from the government, in order to continue doing the work that you do, and also continuing to deal with any future shocks of waves that may come in?
Our main event, the Kolkata Literary Meet, is under the Ministry of Culture because it takes place at Victoria Memorial, which is run by the Ministry of Culture. We have found a happy way of keeping them quite uninterested. Earlier in the conversation, someone mentioned most of the big events take place in Delhi, Bombay, and Bangalore. So possibly that is the prevailing mood. So we don't really fall into that spotlight. So it's a happy place to be in that sense. But I really liked what Roshan said about a single window. It is painful, and in these times it is especially painful because your team is actually going to 3-4 government offices when you're actually being told that the situation is quite unsafe. So a single window would be a fantastic thing that any government could implement for events. Other than that, I just think that governments should so this is across every segment of society. They should just be vaccinating, empowering, and making people more courageous to go out and do things, because we need to live with this situation for a few years. So it's not only about events. As I said, in another life, I am a sports marketing person as well. So we had this international chess tournament where we had grandmasters coming from 6 countries, as well as Vishwanathan Anand is the ambassador of this event and mentor of the young Indians who play in it. So we put it was again held at the National Library, which is another iconic place in Kolkata, and under the Ministry of Culture, as it happens. So they just gave us the space and they said, you do what you have to with it. So we had to put up the temperature screeners, the sanitizers, which was fine. And we had to take all the responsibility of testing the players every 36 hours and looking at COVID certificates. Now, the tricky thing, and this is somewhere there is a place where the government needs to vaccinate younger people quickly, because chess is a tournament is a sport which has a lot of young audiences, and none of them were vaccinated. So it seemed very risky to see 12, 13, 14-year-olds in the audience. This was in November, and we were running the tournament with 50% audience. So I think the government has to do things right on a broader level. I can't think of anything very specific to, an event eventually reflects the health of society. We can't be in a vacuum. So whatever good happens the government does by way of vaccinations, medical facilities, it will reflect on an event. So I think an event actually feeds off what the government does, what the government should be doing as its job.
Thank you, Malavika. So we've so far looked at how the sector has been directly impacted, what associations that represent the sector have been doing, what kind of representations they've been making to the government, and also a good sense of how governments have been responding across India and UK with respect to the Omicron variant, but also across the last 3 waves. I'd like to bring us all in to talk a little bit about what are the innovations happening in this space. We just briefly across the last few minutes also mentioned that whatever said and done, it feels like you're left to yourself as well as a sector. So you have to look out for your own growth and innovations and become a part of that growth. So at this point, I'd love to bring Deepak in. And Deepak, if you could just give us a sense of what have you seen as innovative solutions and best practices that have emerged in the last 2 years. How many of them are feasible in the long run? What kind of learnings have emerged from COVID, particularly in relation to the formats of things that we are presenting, which may or may not be in person or live?
So I think it's a mix of it. Like digital has seen a new shape, okay, and has seen anybody who's who were little there and then chosen to be more there has seen a different value. And same goes to events. So usage of digital tech, virtual content, whoever has used all of this well last 2 years has for sure scaled this, which was not an opportunity sitting before. Okay, so that is one part. Secondly, I'm saying if we see and this is here to stay. So I'm saying in a festival format, the screen will become important. How much and how you're showcasing rightly on that screen. Okay, so that's for sure there. Now, how I do, like in my avatar of a festival promoter, I've done multi of for example, a kids festival called Windmill. Now, in a how have we been able to? So we've taken Windmill virtually. Okay, so what has happened on virtually while and so we will continuously do virtual Windmill, because it's seen the audience how kids are getting involved in the tech world and finally getting entertained there, and this will stay. So and it's not going anywhere. It has got its parallel market to the physical event what it was. Yeah. Say for example, we built a festival called Global South Indian Music Movement. It's Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada. It's a festival of all these 4 languages. How they've all come together, and it is content creation with a lot of musicians coming and creating music virtually. Now, so again, this would have not happened otherwise. Yeah. So what I'm putting a point on is anybody who's added additional content and investment to digital, that will add on to the business in parallel. Okay, so that's where the perspective is.
Thank you. Tom, would love to hear from you about what's been happening in the UK, if there are any certain best practices and innovations that you could point us to.
Sure. I mean, I think there was some festivals that did move online. They sort of attempted to do online iterations. Some were more successful than others. I mean, some people use the Cultural Recovery Fund that I alluded to earlier as a way of sort of adapting their practice and their output to sit with that. I'm just thinking there were some events, I think Lost Horizons is one that springs to mind, that fully embraced the immersive world and sort of created new spaces for audiences that had a lot of interactivity within them as well. Glastonbury did last year a smaller session called From Worthy Farm, which was just a tight selection of some artists just playing acoustic sets in the open. So it's fully distanced, very safe, very compliant, but, you know, very high production values as well. And that was something that fans really liked. I can't remember if it was free of charge or not. So I think there's been that side of things. I do think, though, everybody is at the point where they're admitting, you know, digital's great and it has all its benefits through accessibility on some fronts. Equally, you know, if you don't have access to technology, if your signal is not good, all that kind of thing, it's not so accessible. But people are clamoring to get back to the live experience, I think, and I suspect that's probably the same in India.
That's true. I think it seems that innovation is largely emerging in the digital space, but you need the sort of safety net to even think about thinking creatively amidst all of this risk. So definitely funding helps.
Rashmi, can I just come in with some things on that? Yeah. So 2-3 things. One is that I know that 2-3 companies have now started approaching us as EEMA and even otherwise to come up with a DigiPass, which takes the Kommune protocol at the back end, so that you can see we have thrived on a lot of jugaad always, but now in this thing it can't pass. You need to be, when people used to talk about the fact of, oh, there's an event and people have sort of infiltrated from various areas, somebody's given free passes, entry is not controlled. But now we will need to become extremely careful about this. I remember that during the first wave in Vegas, there was a concert that had taken place where they tested people on the spot 6 hours before. After that happened, people attended the concert. They then did contact tracing later. Nobody had got anything. So I think similar things will happen. And this kind of an initiative is happening in India as well. There are 2-3 people we are currently screening to see, because if EEMA comes on board, it's obviously going to be almost an endorsement from the industry. So we're screening them to see what's going to happen. The second thing is that in-person events will have limited audiences who will be completely, socially distanced. There might be, you've seen people sitting on beds and orbs and all these kind of things that happened last year. But as Veerdas rightly said, he said that my ticket for the intimacy, where I'm selling intimacy and this live thing, the ticket price might go up to 10,000 rupees a person, from an average ticket price of say 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees where it used to be. And he said, I might then have 6 cameras shooting and editing something beautifully, which is going online, for which a person might be paying 100 rupees. And I might get 5,000 people at 100 rupees, and I might get 500 at 10,000. But that's how I'll cover my thing. The third thing that I really want to say is that, this whole thing, we've been talking to insurance companies. Obviously, nobody's got this. And I try to tell people, and I'd exhort everybody who's currently watching this wherever they are, that one insurance that you can get for yourself is to become a part of organizations that are doing this, whether you're part of Artex, because the kind of information that you all disseminate, or it's EEMA, where we have gone so often and knocked on various doors, and the only response is, oh, but you're not big enough. But now we are slowly, with these new numbers, we are saying the more we have members, today it's 500 premium event agencies, etc. But imagine if that number was 50,000, which we know for a fact that it is. Now, if it was 50,000 or 100,000, the association will have so much more power that we will be able to actually then impact policy. because that is critical. So therefore, the sitting on the sidelines waiting for someone else to do things is not going to work. This is the time for everybody to kind of jump in. I have had a tough time in the last month keeping our members in check because they all actually wanted to go out on dharnas and stuff. And we said, listen, that may not be the best way right now because, the other day when we were having that chat, Malavika had very rightly said that there has to be a sensitivity. But at the same time, there needs to be a balance that we need to find, which is what I keep trying to, in my role, look for. The last thing, of course, is that 3 days ago, I saw a wedding that was happening in the metaverse. And now I'm hoping that very soon we will be seeing concerts that will be happening there, which were happening. Gaming is way ahead of us in technology, which is why smart performers have moved into games to perform. So if you see some of the biggest DJs performed in Fortnite and got millions of people coming in. So it's just that smart technology sort of is taking things forward. We genuinely could learn from that. I do believe this is a digital events version 1.0. 2 weeks ago, we had volumetric projection of one person as a hologram in front of another singer, and they were performing together, and they could get the feeling that they were physically together. I don't know how many of you saw that Japan has developed a screen that will now be able to give you scent. So the more you're able, if all our senses, if visual, tactile is also being looked at with a lot of technology where and now it's tough, but if you end up getting tactile, smell, visual, oral, then you're almost there. Of course, nobody can provide the joy of, the serendipity of meeting somebody in the aisle or slapping someone on the back, which is still such a beautiful thing that we have. But I do believe that technology will keep advancing to make these things happen.
Thank you, Roshan. And thank you for sharing all of those varied perspectives on how should we move forward. And you're absolutely right. I think EEMA, I personally have seen EEMA over the last 2 years really make a dent in thinking about how to represent the sector and how to make that best case. Actually, it's a really good time to take some audience questions. There's a question from Roshni Kumar who's asking, so how do we help as individuals who've been in the industry? And this is a question to everyone, Deepak, Tom, Malavika, anybody, Roshan, if you'd like to answer.
I do believe as an association, I can only say that it's not an association only for companies. We've got tiers of membership, and we often tell people saying, come in. We have a lot of people in various committees who are not running event agencies. So our artist committee, our festivals committee, our safety committee had individuals who were experts. And if you have that expertise, that's what we really need. So please come on board. That's one thing that we would love.
So Roshni, that's for you. We'll drop an email to you with the email ID of EEMA so you can reach out to them. There's another question that's come in from Varun, and anybody who would like to respond to Roshni as well, that would be great. Varun says that since we can't ever be sure, even in the best of circumstances, that a festival can go forward, given permissions, weather, logistics, etc., what contingency planning goes into the work? And he gives in, that is, if we cancel, we will. So if anybody would like to share any kind of contingency planning that festivals should have in place, not just given everything that's going on at the moment, but just generally that you could share with Varun Anand, that will be great.
I can come in 2-3 points in this. One is largely every venue is agreed nowadays to ensure that if there is a case like this, then postponement can happen. And earlier they were not sure about it, but now the agreements are capturing that very well. Okay. Second is artist. While you're signing on an artist agreement, ensure that all the artists are signed, that the dates gets pushed, the monies won't come back. So these are the two large costs. And if these two are taken care, I think everything else is fine enough to manage. Yeah.
Thanks, Deepak. Tom, is there anything that you'd like to share with us on this?
No, just to second what Deepak said, actually, I think there is an understanding in the sector here. There are things coming which are called causes for abandonment, where you just have to say this cannot go ahead, but we will carry the engagement over, the terms over, and we will honour it at a future date. And I think people have been understanding about that. I mean, when things fully go back to normal, whether that goodwill remains to be seen. I think at the moment everybody's willing to work together a lot. Whether the bad old ways will sneak back in again, I think remains to be seen.
Thank you, Tom. I'd also like to, Varun, this is for your benefit. Malavika had raised a couple of points earlier, which I think is relevant to this. One is having a contingency budget for going forward, a stronger contingency budget than you've ever had before to account for certain expenses that occur in between editions. And the second would be, I think, to make a stronger case in front of your sponsor at the very least, because having them on board and understanding that this situation may happen again will give you a little bit of a wiggle room. We'll also put some of these recommendations together as we've heard in the session. The final question that I have for all of you before we close is, what are your recommendations to festivals or to running them, and for audiences on how to attend festivals safely? Is there any appeal that you'd like to make here, both to the audience community as well as the festival sector? So this is open to everyone. And I'd love for everybody to come in with something here. Maybe starting with Malavika.
As an event manager, I would like to now think time has come for us to be a little more agile and perhaps look at splitting festivals, rethinking the way we look at January for our festival. So maybe thinking of a monsoon edit, which is the worst idea logistically, but moving indoors and just having one aspect of the festival go to another part of the year, so that you don't feel that the whole thing is gone. You can move things. Maybe I'm just thinking on my feet. The other thing is we have to rethink the way we plan festivals. I used to invite international authors 16 months ahead. I think that is just gone. That period has just gone, or that isn't relevant anymore. So now we have to create festivals which can be put up and mounted in, say, 6-7 weeks. Because otherwise you're just kind of setting yourself up for the situation we just faced right now. So if another wave comes, I think, installment-based festivals and festivals which are lighter to mount would be the way forward.
Thank you for that, Malavika. And I just want to sort of connect that to one of the points that I think Deepak had raised earlier, and briefly Tom as well, that there seems to be a lot of work that will happen within the region, within the country, because there is a lot more to lose when you are at least right now, given the constrained scenarios that we're working in, to work with international artists or artists who have to travel far away, especially if insurance structures don't allow for artist cancellations as one of the aspects to take into account. So actually, when we were working on building festivals from India, we did a small bit of research around thinking about how audiences are going to change over the next 2 years. And one very interesting insight that came through is that in the next 2 years, many of your audiences are going to be either regional or within the nation, within the country. And that correlates to, I think, what both Deepak and Tom were talking about, that the space has opened up for a lot of local talent to come up and have that space and voice in front of the audience that they want to. So maybe that's another thing to think about, that really look deeper into what do you have locally as talent as well. Deepak, would you like to give your recommendation?
Yeah, so mix of it. I think all of it have to be going parallelly. You can't focus on one of it. And say multi-city, Malavika said, it's a great idea. All festivals can be divided into formats in a smaller city, smaller like a social nation. We are doing in a mall format in Delhi. Windmill bus, we are Windmill Festival, Kids Festival, we've created into a bus, which is now traveling to 20 cities. Okay, so that's one part. For sure, think India is larger. Don't think no need to get international artists and so on. Keep it tight. Keep the costs tight. I think that's where the cost has become important. Earlier, we used to, in our festivals, we used to sometimes go like, okay, let's do it. But yeah, keep it tight. ATL cost is gone. Reduce your ATL expenses and spend more time on digital. I think that's make artists as partners. Roshan is a very big believer on it. Make artists as partners in your festivals and IPs, and that's where get somehow government support. Get a brand support in the beginning. Think regional while you're saying as regional is again a future. So I think that's where it is. And audience, for sure, audience doesn't care. I think audience will come if we do the festivals. So don't get worried and do the festival.
That's a positive note to end on, Deepak. Tom?
Yeah, I think that for audiences, I'd second what Deepak said is connect with your audiences, give them loyalty, give them reason to believe in you. And, you know, just simple things like if you do have to cancel or postpone, try and encourage people to not ask for a refund. That can be a real make or break. A lot of festivals experience a lot of goodwill for people just saying, no, keep the price of the ticket, I'll wait a year. I think from the festival side, it's about working together. It's about helping each other out. It's sharing ideas, but it's also coming together as a bigger mass to sort of, you know, do the lobbying, campaign for the support, that kind of thing. Because I mean, whether that's been lobbying at government level in the UK or just supporting people who've been hit really hard times, it's been really encouraging to see what's come out, and it has really helped people through.
Thank you, Tom. Roshan?
Couple of things. I think one is somebody said last year that live events were theater, digital events are broadcast. Learn how to broadcast because it's all going to be about content. The second thing is, just like there was revenge tourism and revenge shopping, as Deepak has said, there will be revenge eventing. People will step out to do it. I've seen it everywhere. People want to come out physically, so they will come. Build communities, because the big thesis that is currently talking about Web3 and crypto, I know it sounds a lot of jargon, but the truth of it at the center, at the bottom, is it's the democratization of the creator economy, which basically means that tomorrow you won't need anyone to do a festival if you can build 100,000 people community where everybody gives you 50 rupees, right? That's all you need. But can you build it? Can you do that? Can you make these, you know, the hypothesis of the 1,000 great fans, the loyal fans that, you know, you need? I think that is something people should really work on. And, you know, I completely agree with what Tom said, that, you know, instead of refunds, ask people to fund. They will fund. People who are loyalists will fund. They liked ownership. They like being a part of things at that level. So learn from this digital economy, because there is a lot to pick up there. This decentralized autonomous organization, which is becoming the whole conversation on DAOs, I think it will happen in our event industry as well.
Thank you so much, Roshan. I mean, it's really amazing to hear all of you end on such a positive note. We've had a couple of very difficult months, but to hear you say that there is a way forward, and the way forward actually is sounding the most fantastic way forward, which is inclusive, which is agile, which is, you know, standing up for yourself, coming together and saying, hey, we have a voice. Doesn't matter the size and scale of what we do and how we operate, but we need to have a voice and we need to make that representation. Thank you for all of this and bringing all of this in together. Just a shout out to all four of you for doing such amazing work that you are doing, and not, you know, despite everything that's going on around you, you're just out there making the work that you do, you know, creating culture for all of us and creating a space that allows people, even within various waves of the pandemic, to use arts and culture to be able to heal. And you have been taking that forward for us. So thank you so much for it. For the audience, just a couple of points. Look at EEMA, sign up, support, become a member if you can, if you are in a position. At British Council and at Arts and Culture Resources India, we also run a festivals community. This is on an independent app called Dara, and we'll also be running this community of festivals.
Thank you everyone for joining us at today's Festivals Connection event. And a big thank you to all our panelists and to Rashmi for this very engaging session. British Council has been working very closely with the festival sector for the last few years. And through our various Festivals for the Future programs, we've been able to connect with a wide range of stakeholders from the sector and hear from the sector experts about the needs and challenges and the way ahead in the sector. So this really informs our program planning, and it helps us in designing these sector responsive projects. So we really value conversations like the one that we had today. And I hope everyone who has joined us today found the session to be useful as well. I'd like to thank our panelists again, Deepak Choudhary, Malavika, Banerjee, Roshan, Abbas, and British Council's very own Tom Sweet and Jonathan Kennedy for sharing these useful insights and information with all of us today. And to our audience, thank you again for taking time to join us. Your feedback is very valuable for us. So do share your thoughts on today's session and any suggestion you may have for the future Festival Connection sessions. You can write to info@artex.co, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream on which the session is currently being streamed on. And last but of course not the least, really the hands and hearts behind this session, the team at Arts and Cultural Resources India and at British Council as well for bringing this session to fruition. To close, we have a short video to introduce the Festivals from India program that Jonathan and Rashmi has talked about, which is set to launch in just a few weeks time from now. So, and all the festival organizers and managers in our audience today, like, please don't forget to register your festival at the platform. And thank you, and good evening. See you again, hopefully, soon.
Thank you, everyone. Good night, goodbye, and stay safe. And we'll see you all soon.